As you know, Berlin has become a place where dissidents, not only from China, but also from many other countries, meet and organize resistance, not least the country of Ukraine. People from Ukraine are organizing their resistance to the war in the middle of Berlin, as you may know. It's important that also the voice of the Chinese critical diaspora is heard here in Berlin, especially when China is often reduced to the voice of one man called Xi Jinping. And there's another reason why it's important to gather here. The Russian war of aggression against Ukraine not only let us wake up in a different world on the morning of February 24th, as our foreign minister famously said, it also signaled the end of an era in which we all hope that not only Russia, but also China would gradually but irreversibly turn towards democracy and liberalism. Instead, China and Russia have become revisionist powers with domestic repression and nationalist expansion as a common feature. Not everyone here in Germany, I would argue, has heard or understood this wake-up call yet. Many still believe that appeasement or muddling through is still possible when confronted with the reality of aggression and war. But we are also seeing progress. Established certainties in political discourse have been shaken. New fundamental questions about the political self-image of our democracy or of democracy in general, not least regarding its resilience, have been raised and are up for debate. Ivan Krastev, a great voice from Eastern Europe, rightly speaks of the need for Western societies to move from the age of soft power to the age of resilience. And I quote, "Soft power was the West's strategy of using its attractiveness as a weapon. Resilience is the ability of liberal democratic societies to prevent others from using their vulnerability as a weapon." To make this transition from soft power and an age of hope, I would say, to an age of resilience, we definitely need to have patience, and we need to see this as a generational task. But I'm sure that we are on the right track, basically. In the following, just a few ideas on which level a new China plus Taiwan competence could be established. And I look first at the level of politics, because I think really the political framework and the political guidelines being discussed in the public sphere are really so important for being taken up in the educational sphere then. So I start first to look at the sphere of politics. And I think it's very important to state that it's undeniable that for several years now, a paradigm shift has been taking place in the public debate about China. Mistrust and criticism of China's domestic and foreign policy behavior is growing. Whether it's about the repressive measures in Xinjiang, the suppression of the opposition in Hong Kong and in China itself, or the threatening gestures towards Taiwan. And I would argue that Russia's war of aggression has much accelerated this turnaround. It's now clear that China, despite tactical distancing from Putin, is forming a united front with Russia against the liberal democracies of the West. Likewise, many in German politics have now realized that the principle of hope, also called change through trade, Wandel durch Handel, which can be traced back, by the way, to a famous article of Richard Nixon on China's integration in the world, has become obsolete as a guiding principle. Now, in the meantime, the Foreign Office is apparently working on a new China strategy, an official document which should be the guideline for German politics regarding China in the years to come, which, as the foreign minister recently said in New York, will be published next year. And by the way, she also said, and I think that's interesting, maybe to be discussed later in the panel, that the China strategy will be very much in line with strategic thinking in the US. But there's still virtually no public debate on that topic. And I would urge the Foreign Office with its progressive participative claim, as we all know, to organize a public debate regarding China and Taiwan as new and challenging issues for Germany's role in the world. A new China strategy could articulate Germany's interest in a peaceful solution to the Taiwan questions more clearly than before. After all, in the last progress report of the guidelines for Indo-Pacific, the so-called Indo-Pacific strategic paper, Taiwan was firstly called as a conflict zone, and the interest of the federal government in a peaceful solution in the Taiwan Strait zone, and only by mutual agreement was clearly spelled out. Generally, the further expansion of political, economic, and cultural relations below the level of diplomatic recognition, and last but not least, the expansion of contacts with the lively and creative Taiwanese civil society should be massively promoted. Just the thought, why not establish something similar to a German Taiwanese youth office, along the lines of the existing German, French, German, Polish youth office, and I think a German Greek office is still going to be founded. I think we should not underestimate really the attractiveness of the Taiwanese civil society and the cultural sector in reaching out and forming new ties between Germany and Taiwan. In sum, it can be said that a new and intelligent China policy should commit itself more strongly than before to Taiwan. The country is proof, and I think other speakers have already said that, of the living democracy in the Chinese cultural area, and it belongs to us in many senses. But it should also be clear that this must not turn into a zero-sum game. It's also important to build up new China competence with regard to the People's Republic of China, a field which needs to clearly discuss, on the one hand, the geopolitical threats and challenges, but also needs to continue to explore the possible scope in scientific, social, and cultural context. Finally, let me make two more comments on the challenges for the education system. To start with a basic observation, Taiwan is still a blind spot in the German educational landscape. We should be very much aware of that, not least also in the landscape of civic or political education here in Germany. We need to really take a strategic look at the issue of knowledge and the battle of ideas and narratives regarding China and Taiwan. In the case of the Ukraine, for example, the lack of knowledge about the history of Ukraine, the history of the conflict, has led to serious misjudgments and misunderstandings in the public and in politics, and we still can witness this today if we turn on our TV and look at the sometimes infamous German talk shows on that issue. And the same is obviously true and may be true also for Taiwan and China. There's an enormous need to catch up in schools, textbooks, and also in extracurricular education. And Taiwan's soft power, which has grown over the years, can play, again, an important role here, be it on the economic, technological, or cultural levels, but also in its dealing with minorities. A good example from academia, the project Taiwan as a Pioneer at 3 German universities funded by the Ministry of Education and Research will focus on Taiwan's role as a political and social pioneer in the coming years. The project aims at studying in depth the historical, social, political, and cultural reasons for Taiwan's role as a trailblazer. This highly innovative and interdisciplinary program should be seen as an entry point, I would argue, to a broad-based build-up of public knowledge regarding Taiwan and its contribution to the world in the 21st century. And to conclude, civic and political education in Germany needs to come back to Ivan Krastev's point at the beginning, to discuss much more intensively the resilience of our societies against new geopolitical threats and aggressions. I mean, if you look at the curricula of civic education in Germany in the past 20 years, geopolitics, threats, war, basically was not taken up in any of these seminars and well-funded programs. So we need to change that. That would be one basic point. We need new long-term and profound educational processes that take a closer look at our own vulnerabilities and our strengths much more than before. Taiwan and Ukraine offer important reference points for this, despite all the differences. For both conflicts are, to quote Timothy Snyder's great essay in a recent issue of Foreign Affairs, are about establishing principles for the 21st century. It is about policies of mass death and about the meaning of life and politics. It is about the possibility of a democratic future. Thank you.